Well, now, that was not the easiest start of my streams so far. Um, Something is fucked with my connection to Facebook. Um, don't know why that is. But hopefully, at least a few souls will find this stream. And that would be nice. So if you do hear this, feel free to post something in the chat. Like, hello, for instance. I think this is the correct instance of the YouTube connection, and we'll see. Yeah, Sylvia, you found your way. That's nice. And also, would be cool if also the chat overlay worked, but maybe it doesn't, because it shouldn't be too easy. It did, however, work fine, of course, yesterday when I tried it, but there is always that factor when you go live. Did I manage to merge the chats in Facebook and YouTube? No, well, Lisa, greetings to you as well. I will just need to see, so I actually managed to post the correct link on Facebook. I think so, but give me a few seconds to actually make sure. Copy link. Very low volume. Is it so? Hello? Oh. Let me fix that as well. Is this better? Fredda. Sweet. And the intention I had was to go live on both Facebook and on YouTube, and actually also on Twitch. I think I'm on Twitch and I'm on YouTube, but Facebook for some reason is screaming at me currently. So I will just see, so at least this seems correct. I will soon find my thread here and my way. But it's great to see that a few people found this stream. I was about to actually say fuck it and cancel because I couldn't get this stuff going. But just give me a second. Is YouTube only to die? Good that it do redirects as it should. But my idea is, of course, to be on both. But for some reason, some streaming key is not my friend today. But that's how it is. At least now the chat overlay seems to be working, which is really nice. Because that's one of the changes I wanted to make previously. Is that I want it to be possible for everyone to see whatever is written in the chat. Because I think it makes it more of a community experience. In any case, I am Nephente of Netherbird and of RIKET. I've been doing, extreme metal for RIKET, Bienenstich. It's good to see that a few friendly faces have found their way here, and I'm impressed that actually people return to my little streams. And thank you for that. In any case, I wanted to become a little bit more of a community thing, because it's mainly me talking, and I have guests at times talking, and all of that is nice and fine. But we are all making the metal scene together, so I think it's I wanted just to make the chat a little bit more visible. But now, since I'm not double streaming on also Facebook, a lot of viewers will never see this. I am going strong. Well, strong, it's a big word, right? I'm doing okay, and this is I said it last week, but then I was lying, but this week it's true. This is the 28th stream I've been doing since the corona. So, and tja, Katrin. Good to see you too. And it's fun because I will mention, well, I will not talk too much in details, but you know a lot of the stuff I will be talking about. Where was I? Yeah, I've been doing 28 streams so far. I will be doing 2 more. I will do an interview with Nordegeist next week, and then I will do like a season finale. It will, of course, be, with sparkles and rainbows and farting unicorns, everything that you come to expect. But I will reflect a little bit on 30 streams. I had no idea that I'd be doing more than a few when I started out, but I felt bored, and I felt intrigued by this. What should I say, this medium, and see what I could do with it. And it's been quite fun, actually. Okay, it's been quite fun, and a really rewarding experience with a lot of questions and a lot of thoughts and reflections, not so much from me, but from people listening, from interacting with various guests. And one very thought-provoking guest that I had was Sebastian from Necrophobic, obviously. And I felt he sparked a lot of thoughts. I had them dormant, I would say, but I haven't really never voiced them as clearly as he did. But it was really thought-provoking. And I think also that will be... I think that is partly the reason why I will talk about the stuff I do today, because I will talk about the realities of extreme metal, the extreme underground metal. I mean, the really small bands, which is the level I'm working on, even though one of my bands is pretty established. Compared to the big artists in the world, it's extremely small. Extremely, extremely, extremely small. And that has consequences when it comes to, how we deal with our fans and with media and stuff. And a lot of new stuff has been happening that I think is really good. Streaming services that are commercial, various platforms that we can use to interact and stuff. But it also comes with a price, and it also comes with... new challenges, I would say, for bands and for fans, especially fans. And I'm 95% a metal fan and 5% a musician, so bear that with you. But it's very important that what I'm going to talk about today is not to complain about where we are heading, because complaining has never helped anyone. And if you look on, every revolution, like the Industrial Revolution in Britain, they hung the engineers with, barbed wire from the trees because they didn't want spinning jenny. They didn't want other machinery to come and change the society, because, change is painful, and change also brings new sets of challenges, and it makes us insecure, and we often result with anger or fear and hostility when we are challenged, and that is, of course, natural, but it's never possible to spin back time anyway. So the question is always, okay, so here we are with the new set of realities. What can we do with that? And I will talk about that. It will be I think, a little bit of a one-way communication, because it will only be me talking. But feel free to inject questions or, exclamations, or I don't believe that, or I have a different opinion, because I always welcome that, because I learn a lot by being challenged. Well, besides, being generally challenged, which is, everyday life. So with that said, I will actually start to look into some. I have actually prepared a little bit today. Are you ready to be doing some math lessons with me when it comes to the realities of extreme metal? And I will be 100% honest, and I will use my own band as an example, and discuss the realities we are facing, and why it is not always so easy. You feel that's okay? Well, silence is agreement, so that's that. Well, you don't know what I'm gonna say yet, so it's hard to have an opinion about it. But as always, it's important that there is a disclaimer. This is Nephente's idea of stuff and how I view it. I, as every thinking person, might revise my stance on stuff as I learn more, and as I understand more, and as I progress. In any case, this is what I was gonna talk about. So there is a chat above my slide here, but I think that's fine. So actually, some thoughts regarding music streaming platforms. That's mainly what I'm going to focus on, and what that means for us, and why it sometimes can be a little bit of, the emperor is naked, and why that happens, and also why I, as a musician, am part of that, and also, actually, he's less naked than he was. But he still only wears Speedos, maybe. That, as emperors do, at times. To set the background is that what I'm talking about is extreme underground metal. Bands that are very, very harsh in how we create art, and the art we create is harsh, it's fierce, it's difficult. It has never been welcomed by mainstream TV or mainstream radio. But now we are meeting the global platforms. So we come from a tradition of tape trading. We discovered bands through making tape copies of stuff we found that we sent to friends. Oh, have you ever heard of this new cool band called Cannibal Corpse? They are fucking brutal. No, that's really cool, but have you heard, Gorment? So we come from a very living, a very active community, a global community, but that was actually populated by quite few people. I would say that a lot of the most prominent people in those days knew each other. Most bands definitely knew each other. But it progressed also from, we had a tape trading, and that was, I would say, the streaming media of the day. That's how you discovered new stuff. And then you had really underground record labels that put out, albums with, you could have, the most brutal and grim cover artwork, or the most disgusting artwork, whatever. Because these labels, they were just like the bands. They were fans, and they came from the same clay, and they weren't big business, or not even businessmen at all at times. But also do bear in mind that the physical product was the key into this world. You had to find these albums somewhere and listen to them in order to be, into death metal, or into extreme doom or black metal. You couldn't just go online and be part of that community. You had to find this fucking stuff. And normally for most people that meant mail order or tape trading, whatever. That also meant that there were very, very few rules and limitations to what you could do. It was hard to make a cover art that was so disturbing that, you know, you couldn't find an underground label in the world that would put it out. On the contrary, they would say, "Oh fuck, this is nasty," because it was a new art form, new form of expression, and you tried stuff. Stuff has changed, yeah, but very few rules, very few limitations, and I would say that mentality is still very strong in the extreme metal underground. But stuff has changed. We have gone from tape trading enthusiasts to moving into the global digital platforms. And with that, and I think I will try to explain why I think that has happened. But this is of course the dream of reaching the masses, yet also, you know, the disgust of being mainstream. It's not easy being true. But I mean, I, like everybody else, aspire to have my music heard by as many people as possible, but only the right people. But still, I want to be heard. I want people to discover how fucking amazing this art is that I'm making. And so does everybody else. Because if you didn't want people to hear your shit, you would do something else besides starting a band. Because I mean, very definition of recording stuff is to make it available, but maybe not to the entire world, but you want people to hear it. But when you go to global digital platforms, there will be limitations, especially when you go to like YouTube or Facebook or Twitch. These platforms that actually don't cost you a cent to use. Like I for some reason couldn't go on online on Facebook today. Can I complain about that? No, I can't, because I'm not paying for the platform. And there is this old saying, old as in, you know, maybe a decade or two. If you don't pay for the product, you are the product. And this is really true with Facebook. I am the product. By using Facebook, I'm part of the product. I'm not paying for it. I cannot really put any demands there. I should be quite happy that, you know, I have a platform where I can put stuff up for free. I can stream for free via YouTube. But I have to play by the rules. Because like it or not, they are commercial companies. They have stockholders. They have whatever sets of IDs. And they make the rules. If they don't like my stream, they will kill it and kick it out. They did that last week. Because we were breaching a few community rules. I cannot go to a court and complain about YouTube throwing out my stream. Because basically I have signed whatever... I have signed away, you know, almost every right when I agree to the terms and conditions. What I do get is the potential to reach 1 billion users without paying for it. Yes, so I'm part of the product. I'm not paying for it. I cannot really complain about that. But it's very different from the old days where you could, you know, do whatever and nobody could stop you from that because you made your own demo tapes and you could always find some printing company that, you know, would print whatever. So when we go into Facebook land and YouTube land and expect the same freedom of our expression, stuff tends to go sideways. But we do it anyway, because we are all digital and modern in that sense. But when our art meets these set of rules, stuff can become a little bit difficult. I will try to not be too winding here. In any case, so there are sets of rules here, and one example, one prime example, is that you can no longer share a lot of Bursum links on Facebook. And this is where the old idea of, my art is brutal, I am brutal, I express my self through this, and then you post it in your music discussion group on Facebook and you get banned. That is when global platforms with their community standards, stakeholders, shareholders, and their opinion of what is, something we want to be associated with meets the underground metal mentality. Like Bursum or not, but they are essential to what black metal is. We would have been different without Bursum or without Mayhem, or without a lot of these bands. But they were created... Fucking hell. I need some water. They come from a very different place than the community standards of modern global platforms. Just saying. But also, why is it hard to talk about the realities of, for instance, the global streaming, which I will talk about? I would say the music industry is built upon myths and dreams. And musicians are extremely proud. Musicians have always been proud and always had an image. And that image has been, if not being the most grim and brutal, in some cases that has been the image, but in many cases it's been, to look a little bit more successful than you are. Because we want to project success. It's part of it. It's an image industry and a dream industry. And we had, for instance, had MTV. They had MTV Cribs. As it would turn out, a lot of that is fake and staged. But it doesn't matter. They created the idea that, these different musicians are extremely successful, extremely rich, and this is what the music industry offers. So to talk about the less glamorous aspects of the musicianship, it doesn't come so easy for artists. We tend to lie. We tend to lie about how much we sell. We tend to lie about how much we make, or rather, we tend to at least pretend that we're not losing money on almost everything we do. For record labels, I will come to the question, Kurt, very soon. For record labels, it's even more important, because the myth of success, that, you can really make it, that is what drives all this new talent into the industry. And if we said that, 99% will fail, they will actually be way less successful than you expect. They will be in debt. And actually, most of the people you think are successful are also in debt. Some are homeless. Some are drug addicts. And we only, project what we want to project. Then it's not so good for the business. I still think the Dream Factory will be going, because there are so many talented people who really want to do this. But we as musicians tend to be not 100% honest, because we feel it's shameful not to make money or to be very successful. I've met so many musicians that, when you ask them how much they sell, they lie. Because they don't want to, admit, especially these days, the times are different. Most bands sell very little, and extreme music sells even less. But success is not just money, and I will come to that. I am living my dream when I do music, but it's financially, it's not a very good venture, and I will show you why. But we don't talk about that. And then we also point fingers and say, well, it's because Spotify paid too little. No, I will explain why they don't pay too little. It's because it's too cheap. Or Spotify is not supposed to pay at all. It's actually much better to be paid something than nothing, which was the other alternative. I'm coming back to that. So I'm not putting the blame here. I'm just trying to lay out the land. Nephente, have you found success in spreading Netherbird across YouTube, Spotify, digital platforms? What did you guys do to align spreading the word with you? I would say we have had a lot of success, especially on Spotify, where we have, for a band our size, a very good following. So I would say I'm quite happy with our reach there. YouTube, not so much. YouTube has become very difficult, especially when you're not backed by a big label or someone with a huge number of subscribers. Then it's hard with YouTube. Spotify has become much harder because it's so much harder to get onto the playlists that you need to create a momentum. If you get onto these playlists, you get a lot of people who discover you, and then they will rediscover you. And as many people listen to you, you will also be suggested to more people. So it's like a snowball effect. But we were lucky, and we were included on some lists, not on the recent album, but previously. And I would say it's very important to be backed by a label to have a chance, because there's so many albums coming out there, and those editorial playlists are not open to everyone. They can't include everything. But if you can't get into that, try to get into some other playlist, because it's a sea of music being released. And I'd say the algorithms are really good, but the algorithms favor music that has a certain number of listeners. So you need to get up there a little bit. I would say do not pay for playlists, because most of those people who offer that service are frauds. They don't have so many listeners. So they prey upon the musician's dream of success, but try to get on legit playlists. So I would say we've always been very forefront. I'm coming back to that when in trying new platforms and medias, and I think it's because I'm somewhat of a nerd. I like computers, I like statistics, I like data, and I like to toy around with different stuff. Hey, Julia. But I will talk about the harsh realities of stuff. So keep that in mind. When we went from tape trading and word of mouth and MP3s, we migrated to MySpace, and some people might remember that. MySpace was a very fair community in the sense that if you got on there and you grinded, so you collected friends for your band page, you had an enormous reach. It wasn't nerfed in the way that Facebook and these other platforms are. It's also because it was much cruder technology. And as it would turn out, also because they couldn't scale and make their business model viable. But for some time, we had if I speak about Netherbird, we grinded so hard that we had 100,000 people connected to our band page. So we had a huge following there, and that resulted in a lot of reach. We didn't get any payment from MySpace, but we didn't get any payment from Pirate Bay, Kazaa, Audio Galaxy, Napster, and the other alternatives either. That was, the other way of discovering music in those days. But MySpace fell, and now we have commercially, very sound companies like Facebook, Instagram, which is Facebook, YouTube, which is a hybrid platform, and some others. And now we have music streaming platforms. We have Spotify, Apple Music, Deezer, YouTube Music, many others. But we have gone from, a very rogue place to a place, for instance, like Facebook, where our reach is extremely limited. And that shouldn't be a problem if we worked the way we used to, with recommending each other the music. But when we try to play with the big names, Beyonce and whatnot, and we try to do what they do and we look at their numbers, then we're never going to succeed because we don't have the money backing us to make those sort of campaigns possible. And that is potentially a problem. But today we have the community platforms, a few of those, and they are difficult to reach out on, I would say. They're not music centered, and they're costly to get a following there. What you can do is the word of mouth, or like messenger to messenger, get people to talk about it and buzz about it. That still works, of course. But then we have the streaming platforms. Spotify is the one I'm going to talk about, and the most obvious one, especially for us in Sweden, that actually provide an ecosystem for musicians and listeners. Huge amount of music, huge amount of artists, and a huge amount of listeners, and a business model. So, I mean, there are various, but what these services all do is that they have a lot of music available, and unlike the old days, they pay a sum for each stream to whoever owns the recording. But this is where it becomes quite important. They pay to the one owning the recording, not necessarily me. So, what is good? What is bad? Well, of course it's good, I would say, if I do music and there are potentially millions of listeners and millions of songs, and you will never run out of streams on Spotify. Because, I mean, if 1 billion listeners would like to listen to Netherbird tomorrow, we wouldn't run out of bandwidth. I don't know. I think Spotify could scale to. I think they have a decent capacity. We would never be able to print that amount of CDs. It wouldn't be possible. So in that sense, it's super cool. It scales. And also for me personally, wonderful tool. I can discover so much new music. Not all music, because like I said, if it's too extreme, maybe one day it won't fit the profile of Spotify. That's a risk. They also provide actually really cool tools for me as an artist, analytical tools. Spotify does that, Apple Music does it poorly, but at least they have something. It's no longer a black box. I know fairly well who listens to our music on Spotify. And also, Spotify and these ecosystems are cool because they're happy, they're growing, they still have some way to go before they're extremely profitable, but they are growing. And it's always nicer to work with, platforms that are doing well rather than trying, to hold on while MySpace is sinking into the ocean. That wasn't so good. To build 100,000 friends connected to our band only to see the fucking shit go under. That wasn't the best day. What I think is bad with Spotify and all the other platforms is that the money I put in don't necessarily go to the artists I like. They go in and they are distributed based on, whatever people are listening to. So if I go in and listen a lot to my artists, yes, then my money will go in that direction. But it's not, if I pay €9 and I only listen to one song by Wormwood, they don't get €9 at the end of the month. That's not how it works. So basically I'm funneling in something which is a pool of money into a pool of music, and then based on what everybody listens to, the payments are orchestrated. That is a bit different. If I went into a record store in the 90s and I bought an Anthrax album and never listened to it, some money would still go to people who works with metal. Somebody has printed the CD, somebody runs the store, somebody is distributing the album, someone runs the label, and Anthrax would get some money. That's a difference. And I would say also, as these platforms have grown into maturity, it's harder and harder to get exposure, because it's just fiercer competition. It's harder to get into their editorial playlists. It's natural. They've grown. But actually what has happened is that the underground is underground again. We had a few years where we could look bigger than where we were on MySpace, on Spotify and so on, because we were fairly quick to be there. But actually underground, the very definition of it is that it's not available for everyone without looking for it. So it makes sense that extreme underground music isn't on all the playlists on Spotify. But for a while we were there, and we got used to that, and it was simple. I would also argue, and I'll come back to that the subscription fee is way too low. €9 to have access all the music in the world is too little. I'll come back to that. If it was the double, Spotify could pay double amounts. If it was 10 times as much, of course they could pay 10 times as much. So I can't sit and say I would like more payouts without also realizing, well, it depends on the fact that I'm inputting not so much money. It's just pure, simple mathematics. Spotify should have a percentage of the fee that I as a user can decide which artist should get. Yes. For instance, now they have a donation alternative instead. So they fixed a little bit of that. You can donate money directly to the artist. But I would love it if I could say that on top of these €9, I add another €10 and it should go to these few bands. But I think Spotify would argue that makes their business model too complicated and too cumbersome, and they think, I don't know, I don't work at Spotify, I have friends who work there. Spotify is, of course, innovative as fuck, and they are the ones making the most for bands these days. So they are big enough to make a difference, like McDonald's says they are. But they have the connection between listeners and the music and the musicians, and they have all the data, so they could come up with cool things, I think, in order to make it possible to more directly put your money to the bands that you like. Or they should have maybe, a fund for upcoming talent in this and this and this. Would you like to put some money there? Yeah, whatever. Also, a difference with all these streaming platforms, unlike I have 1,000 CDs here on the wall, is that you don't really own the music. It can come and go. If a label all of a sudden gets into war with Spotify, the music I love can be removed. That doesn't happen in my CD shelf. My CD shelf contains music because I own them. I own these copies. On Spotify, I rent them, basically. So I have access to them for now, but no promises are made about 20 years from now. And I've seen, for instance, Apple Music removed all the music by a Swedish artist in China because she was criticizing the Chinese government. Well, it will be harder to remove her music from my CD shelf if I had it. I don't. It's a pop artist. But this is what happens when global actors, like global companies, they have to abide by global rules. So there is a risk there, I would say, that the stuff I love now might not be there in 20 years. So if I really want to make sure, well, then I need some other copy as well. So, like I said, unpredictable. Spotify is not is like Netflix. Each one has their preferences. It's a great tool for artists to get exposure of. Yes, it's great. But it has its potential risks as well. like I said, if Netherbird becomes very unpopular in the US, I don't think we have that impact, but potentially our music could be removed because, you know, otherwise they would put sanctions. Or there could be, you know, a movement where people in Sweden find our music offensive, and rather than to have a lot of angry shareholders and news stuff, our music could be removed. That doesn't happen with stuff I own. Just saying. But now I'm going to talk a little bit about Netherbird, and this will be bluntly honest. I haven't talked to my band members about talking about this stuff. So we'll see. Maybe I'm relieved of my duties. Maybe the record label I'm working for will relieve me of my duties. But hey, that's the risk we take when we share stuff. Just to give you guys a little bit of a background, I would say Netherbird is quite established, but still a very underground band. I am just trying to read. Can't multitask to mail. Quite established, but not a huge band. We've been on the forefront for a long time when it comes to new platforms. Like I said, 100,000 friends on MySpace. We gave away 200,000 albums have been downloaded for free from our website over the years. We don't give it away anymore, but we used to. These days we have the backing of what I would say is a good record label, Eisenwald. They do what they can for us. And also we never got spoiled in the 90s. We were formed in 2004, so we never had the bigger sales that most bands had in the 90s. So we never got used to, getting a lot of money from a release. Some bands did, and today it's really painful for them, and they are the ones who are the angriest when it comes to this new compensation. What should I say? The schemes of compensation. As you will see, selling physical stuff renders more income than selling digital stuff, but it also costs more. But if you used to sell a lot of albums and today you sell only a few, and then you see your stuff being streamed a lot, of course you will be angry and say, I get paid too little. But for us, streaming has always been, I would say, the bigger part of our stuff. But we had quite some success at Spotify, and we have a steady listener base. Not a huge one, but say that we have like 4,000 or 5,000 listeners a month that listen to one or more songs. And that's not so bad. But what does it mean? Yeah, let's talk about that. Say that a guitarist in Netherbird would like to buy new strings for his guitar. That happens. A guitarist might sometimes want new guitar strings. I've heard about that. I've seen them change strings. It's a plausible scenario. And for this example, let's just assume that the guitarist in question has his own company. So that when we pay out the money from the band, he can use that money without paying extra taxes. So his company actually gets the income. His company also buys the strings to the guitar. If you don't have a company, you will have to, in Sweden, add like 30-40%. Or rather, you will have to discount that. Because when you take the company money out as a salary, you'd have to pay, an additional 30-40%. So, and he wants to buy this. Hybrid Slinkies. Old, tested, awesome guitar strings. And they cost €9. So he needs €9 to buy new guitar strings. Because he's going to go all in. He's going to switch all 6 strings on his Gibson. Not just one string. So he needs a whopping €9 in his hand. Or rather on his company account. So the company can buy Hybrid Slinkies. So, in order to do this, in order to make income, we make albums. So, Into the Vast Uncharted, an album we released 2019, last year. It's our 5th studio album, and we used to do almost everything ourselves, but instead, this time, we decided to actually invest some money, some extra money. It's always costly to release albums, but this time we invested more. So besides the hundreds of hours that you put into, writing, rehearsing, recording, we went to a recording studio to record the drums and also have them edited. So it's a recording process, and then somebody fixes tweaks the tracks a little bit, and you get, okay, so the drums are recorded. Then we have our own studio where we recorded guitars, bass, and vocals. And then we took in an outside producer, someone, to mold the sound into, a real album, something that should sound good. And then we took another person to master the stuff. And mastering, for those who doesn't know, is basically you take the finished product, but you push it so it will sound good on Spotify or on CD or on vinyl. So basically, it's like using a very advanced EQ to polish the sound the last few percent. And the cost of this is that we put 2,000 euros into recording and editing the drums, approximately. There's a few working days in recording, a few working days in editing, and so, 2,000 euros. Then the mixing of the album, to take all these tracks that we recorded and, mixing them and making it, into an album, another 6,000 euros. And another, say, these are not 100% accurate, but 1,200 euros for the mastering. So in total, 9,200 euros. That's the complete cost on our part for the album. So each person has invested, and this is the money we invested, 1,533 euros each. That's what we put there. So, how do we get the money back? Yes, you go to a store and you buy a CD. And the CD costs X amount of euros. Basically, they get the CD sent to them, and then they add whatever they think is necessary in order to recoup their costs. For staff, for rent, heating, whatever. So say that you pay 12 euros for this album, then approximately 8 of those would go back to those that provided the CD. And in a normal record deal, label would take maybe 75% of that, and the band gets 25%. So say for the sake of the argument, I will now remove my little webcam. Hopefully you can still hear me. So then the band gets 2 euros. This is not an unlikely record deal. Some would only pay the band 1 euro. Some would pay them 3 euros. But, say, for argument's sake, 2 euros. Then you have 6 members in the band. So each member would have 16.7% in our case. That means 0.33 euros. That's what a band member gets when you bought an album in the store. Not a whole lot of money, but still. Why does the label take so much? Yeah, because the label, they have promoted the product. They have printed it. They've paid the artwork. They work full time fixing stuff for bands. They don't normally have other jobs, so they need to somehow survive. So they take a cut, and this is different for each band, and each label will have their own unique contract, of course, but not a very unlikely scenario. So, in order to get your slinkies, now we'll see if you guys skipped math or not. How many CDs would you need to sell? Yeah, you would need to sell 27 CDs, and then you could buy your guitar strings. Only problem is, you still owe for the album. So if you also want, first to pay the album, then buy the album, the slinkies, you would need to sell 4,691 CDs. Then you have got the money back that you invested in the album production into the Vast Uncharted, plus you have enough money to go and buy a set of guitar strings. Do Netherbird sell 4,691 CDs? I would love to be a liar and say, yes, of course we sell 4,000 plus albums. No, we don't. I don't know exactly how many we sold. 1,000 maybe. Not even that. Less than 1,000 so far. And that's the reality today. You don't sell a huge deal of albums. That is also why a lot of bands get into the top list quite easily, because the albums don't sell so much for any artist. But so if you sell some a week, you could get into the top list actually. But this is the reality of it. Until we have sold 4,691 CDs, we can't buy those fucking guitar strings without, feeling that shit, we need to sell a little bit more. And it's simple mathematics, right? So basically, when you pay for a CD, at least 33 cents goes to each band member. It's actually, that's not nothing. But yeah, in order to recoup costs, and this was a fairly costly album by our standards. But of course, when Metallica makes an album, it costs a little bit more. But then again, they sell more. If we instead check any questions when it comes to, the physical aspect of selling albums and income? I'm so fucking pedagogical, I guess. Well, just type in the chat if you have questions. If we instead look on, streaming, and mind you, we don't have to say streaming or CDs. Of course, we do both. Payouts differ. That's important. And most record labels don't know what other record labels get out. But I've been doing a lot of research, and it seems like most agree that the payout is somewhere between 0.006 to 0.008 euros per stream. So, for the sake of the argument and this discussion, we say that the compensation is 0.007 euros per stream. And it's not so far from the truth when it comes to us. So when you listen to a tune on Spotify, in our case, the label gets 50% of that and the band gets 50%. That's a very decent deal. Some labels might give the band more, some give them less. And that might be tricky because that's a business secret between the band and the label. I guess, for instance, Metallica has a very, very nice deal. But Netherbird, we cannot fight so hard with various labels and, get the last little nitty-gritty. So for us, it's 50-50. So that would mean if you listen to a tune, we get 0.0035 euros. And then we are 6 members. So each member gets 0.000583 euros for a play. So if we want to buy a set of strings, we need 15,429 streams. The beautiful thing then is that everybody could buy a set of strings in the band with this math that I'm using. But basically, we need a lot of streams in order to get just new strings for our guitars. And if you also want to pay for the entire album, we need more streams. We need 2.6 million streams. Or, since the album has 8 songs, we need people to listen to it 334,000 times. Then we have paid for the album and we got a new set of strings. Is this the reality of it? I said that we are fairly successful on Spotify. No. If we look into it, we can say that Into the Vast Uncharted so far has been played 244,000 times, the tracks of it. So we're a tenth from that. But we are getting there. And it's rising. And the beautiful thing is, when I sleep, I still make a little bit of income from Spotify. When I go abroad, I still make a little bit of money from Spotify. And then, of course, it's not just Spotify. We're also on iTunes or Apple Music. We are on blah blah blah. A lot of these services, and they all pay something. And I think it's important to be right. Spotify pays way more, for instance, than YouTube. Much, much more. So I don't think it's fair when Spotify is always critiqued as the one paying, too little. But this is the reality of it. So we need to sell a few thousand CDs, get a few million plays, and then the album has been, recouped financially. And I think it was you, Kurt, who mentioned it. We don't do this for money. No, that's true. So I'm not complaining. I'm really proud of our success. I just want to be level, because this has been up on several of my streams, the compensation of digital platforms and stuff. So I just want to tell a little bit about reality. And also get some suggestions, and I'm coming to that. So before Spotify and before Apple Music and all these, the income we had from digital music was zero. Sub-zero. No, zero. MySpace didn't pay anything. Kazaa certainly didn't pay. Audio Galaxy didn't pay. All of these services or, companies, whatever, Pirate Bay, they gave us exposure, but you can't pay the rent with that. The difference is that Spotify and these companies are paying. And the reason why they don't pay so much is because we don't pay so much. So to sort of complete this, I would say, no, we're not making a living from making underground music. But we do live to make it. I love this. And I'm fine with actually, not being able to pay my rent with this money, because it's a hobby, it's a passion, and I'm actually delighted to actually get some money back. And most of our albums, in the end, they recoup their costs, and I think that is a reward in itself. And like I said from the beginning, we play underground music. We play on a very different set of standards than Beyoncé. And we cannot think that the tools that are sort of designed for Beyoncé and Eminem and these huge artists with their huge following should, be equally useful for the music we make. And this is my punchline. I'm coming to it. I say that Spotify charged too little, and I don't mean that they should, increase it 100 times, because then people will not pay for it, and then they couldn't pay anything at all. What I mean is that the cost of Spotify is nowhere near what we need to invest if we want the metal scene to live and breathe. When I was a teenager, true story, I worked extra on a factory because I wanted to have enough money to buy CDs and merch. And I spent easily 100 euros each month. And I actually did a little bit of a researchy thing there, and that would be 170 euros by today's currency, because I'm so old. Of course, that money, I went to a metal record store. I bought stuff that was put out by metal labels and metal bands, and every penny went their direction. These days, I put happily 9 euros into Spotify. And if I listen more than the average listeners, I gear that money towards metal and the labels. But if I don't listen, that stuff, it doesn't go to the music I love. But that's my choice. But I compensate by buying merch. I buy CDs, I buy albums, I buy t-shirts, because that is the extra 91 euros that I used to pay for the music that I'm not paying anymore. So I can't go from spending 100 euros on metal to spending 9 euros and expect that to be, enough for the scene to thrive. So instead, I need to put that money directly to the bands. You can donate, you can be on Patreon, you can buy merchandise, you can do a lot of stuff. Instead of, just saying, I think these digital platforms, they should be, no, I mean, sure, that would be great. But I think we need to take back the underground mentality and actually directly support also. I'm talking a lot today, but I don't have so many stuff left, but I really want to convey this stuff. So what should a metal fan do then? I think you should listen to all your favorite bands on Spotify and whatever service you're listening to, Deezer, whatever, and listen a lot, because that helps them a lot to reach more people. And you should tell your friends about them, because this is how new bands can be discovered. Because without Spotify and stuff, it's hard to even discover bands these days, because nobody sends me any, compilation tapes. So I need to be told by Spotify about new stuff, and Spotify has a tendency to favor stuff that people listen to. So we need to actively listen to it and share it. But I also think you should take some extra money, and funnel it directly into the bands that you care about. Buy CDs, LPs, and merch, because that not only helps the band, it also helps the labels. And the labels are super important. Just as we need, gig organizers to make gigs happen. Bands can, of course, organize their own gigs, but it tends to be more complicated than you expect. And it's the same with putting out music. Bands can, of course, put up the stuff on Record Union, but labels are extremely helpful. But they also need some income. So, of course, they get a little bit of the digital income, but if you buy a CD, money is also funneled directly into the labels. And this makes the labels able to support the bands, to collaborate with, digital platforms and be this partner that bands really need. So I would say, in closing, it's not really up to Spotify and Apple and these other services to fix the income for bands. It's up to us as metal fans to ourselves support the bands we want to, because they do give us some income. I would say Spotify stands for a substantial part of the income Netherbird gets, but the most important for us is still the fact that people buy bundled CDs from Bandcamp and stuff. That is the underground approach. I've been talking a lot, but I really, really wanted to at least share my views on this stuff. And it's funny because at least one Spotify employee is in the chat. See if my account works later on. But so I would say that in order to make the scene thrive, we need to get a little bit of this the old mentality back, that we can't just sit back and hope that 9 euros will solve stuff and the bands will thrive, and if not, I'll complain about it on Facebook. We need to put some extra effort there. And the metal scene is still very much more loyal than I have friends who play other types of music, and they have a really hard time reaching out. And I can see in the metal scene, we still, almost all bands get some sales and stuff. So it's not dead, but we need to work a bit differently than Beyoncé's fans, I think. I have a sore throat, so if I've been even less coherent and audible than normally, that's the reason. So now I have vented. I have spoken. I hope my examples made some sense. I'm happy to elaborate further on this if anybody is interested. You can reach out on my email, Twitter, or any of my other profiles. And this is just it's my current view of stuff. In 2 years, stuff has changed, and I might also have changed my opinion a little bit. But I still think it all boils down to us as music appreciators to really support the bands and to do so as directly as possible. But we should, of course, also use these other services, because that's, at least for me, I find 90% of all the new stuff I listen to via Spotify, because I think their algorithms, at least they seem to be working on me. So I wouldn't trade that. But I also don't expect them to make sure that Wormwood can release their next album. That I better buy a t-shirt then. Because otherwise it takes a long time for them to buy new strings. And I want them to have really good strings on the guitars when they record the next album. Let's see. If I want to get the Desired Song album for a digital platform, you only have Bandcamp and Amazon. Any alternative? I would say Amazon works fairly well. You're based in Turkey. Spotify is not available there, maybe. I hope it will be. And I hope these platforms will do fine, because of course the more people that listen, the more money they will, have the chance to distribute. I don't know for sure, but I think Spotify more or less pushes away 50% of their earnings, and that's not so many companies that do. So I think I think it will be. We will all adjust. Another way would be, that more metalheads listened, so we get higher, rates, more plays, and that would also, of course, give us more payouts. You can buy from bands and bands' websites, yes. Buy from labels. That's really my tip, because it's good for the band if the label is happy. It's good for the label if they sell albums. If you buy them directly from the band, normally the band gets a little bit more money. But normally the albums they sell, they come from this little extra pile of albums that they get from the label. The label normally gives the band 50 or 100 or several hundred albums, because they are pretty cheap to produce, and then the band gets almost all the profit when they sell it via Bandcamp, for instance. Bandcamp finally do Chromecast. We'll buy more albums there. Yeah, Chromecast. That's a hybrid also. So it's a way to stream your stuff directly from Bandcamp. Bandcamp is nice. I would say some labels really favor Bandcamp, others really don't. I think Netherbird has sold a lot of merchandise through Bandcamp. Bandcamp takes 15%, I think, from the transaction, and then PayPal takes another 3.5% something. So 80% goes to the band. And sometimes labels, like for instance Eisenwald that we work with, they are very active on Bandcamp. So actually when you buy an album from Netherbirds Bandcamp page, you actually buy it from the label. So but Bandcamp is still fairly new, and they are good at physical stuff. I don't know how much the digital sales are there. It might be rising. But yeah, just a great example of something that seems to be working for the metal clique of people. Many label give you download code when you buy an album, yes. And that download code is normally for Bandcamp. I think we do as well, actually. That's extra good when it comes to stuff like vinyl, because then you can also download it, and yeah. I don't hold all the answers here. I think you should, of course, always go with whatever service you prefer, but also realize that we need to shift some money into a scene if we want it to thrive, because we cannot live from likes alone. We are doing pretty well. We are like roaches. We're used to. We never used to getting a lot of revenue from album sales, but the bands that were already established in the 90s, they really suffer because they sell much less on CD and on vinyl, even though we always hear that the vinyl is selling more, and it is, but from a very low level. So for them, there is this discrepancy between how it used to be and how it is. It's very painful. But the rest of us maybe not so much. We're used to getting little. Any other questions before I close this shop up? No. It's been one way this time, but that's sometimes how the cookie crumbles. I'm delighted to see so many familiar names here. It's really, really cool. And I mean, the metal scene is exactly what we make it together. It's not my opinion. I have one opinion. I think Sebastian provided some really, really nice insights when it comes to the global community platforms. But it's also, I mean, you guys, you decide what happens now. Just as I decide, what I do. But as fans, we make the biggest difference. And I think that is why I'm never worried about the metal scene, because we are still very loyal and very, community focused. It sounds very hippie-like, but I don't mean it like that. We still care about music in a deeper level. I have friends who play other types of music, and damn, it's hard for them to sell anything, because there is really no community, no word of mouth, nothing, if you compare it to other metal communities. So we'll find ways, of course. Thank you, Kati. And you talked about behind the scenes part. Most of us have no idea. Yeah, I know it's a little bit like a class, and it's you have a deranged professor here also who's like, of course, if James Hetfield was to talk about it, it would sound different. Of course, if Spotify did it, it would be different. But this is, the extreme metal perspective. It was extreme underground metal perspective upon stuff. But sometimes I think we just wish so much for, we so used to these platforms, they fix everything, but really they can't. It's still very much up to us. We pay nothing. To use Facebook, and you can't really pay the rent or buy a sticker or anything with that. So we still need to make that effort. Concerts and merch sales, yes. There is a lot to be said about merch sales at concerts also, because the percentage that the venues take these days, it's rising, because they are also trying to get, compensation. So in the end, it's always the artist who end up with less, unless you're a huge artist, because then you become a multimillionaire. But most of us never do. In any case, it was really nice to be able to talk to you guys, and I'm happy that the stream finally started. I will try to find out what's wrong, so I also am able to stream on Facebook and YouTube and Twitch next time. And next week I'm gonna have some guests from Gotland. We're gonna talk extreme black metal then. Looking forward to that, and I wish you all a really good evening. Sorry if I answered this, but it's worth buying MP3s. I don't buy merch, but I do buy MP3s from bands I enjoy. I heard they get less than 10 cents per songs. Depends on where you buy them. If you buy them on, for instance, tunes from Bandcamp, the band gets like, it depends if it's the label or the band, but they get at least 50% of what you're paying. And 10 cents is not so bad for, a digital thing that you can sell as many times as possible. So it's hard to answer for sure on each specific case. But if you buy like the Grand Voyage from the Netherbird Bandcamp, and you pay, say you pay €9 for that, we get like 7. But that's because that one was released on a license deal, so it's actually all that money goes to us. So it depends. But actually, as soon as money is leaving your hand, some of it goes to the band, and some of it goes to people working with the band. So I would say it always is a positive thing, actually. But sometimes just ask the band what is the most beneficial if you buy from them directly or via the label. I would say in many cases actually the labels are very close friends of the bands. They need to cooperate well. So underground labels should be supported, and for instance when it comes to Netherbird, I want people as much as possible to buy via the label. That's mainly makes our life easier. And also, just to recap, the label take a big percentage of physical sales. Why do they do that? Yeah, because they need to invest in the next album, and then they will pay parts of that production. The album that I mentioned, where we paid all of the production, that was when we went to a new label. So we brought them an already recorded album. With some luck, the label can also contribute a little bit to that. So the money that the label take out is not just to pay their own salaries, it's also to make it possible to invest back in the band. So that's very much of a duality relationship between band and label. If everything goes well, both sort of build on each other. Buy the LP CD on Bandcamp and you get to have the MP3 right to the stream. Yeah, win-win. Good suggestion there, Jane. All right, guys, I bid you a fantastic continuation of this Monday, whether it's in the evening or in the daytime, depending on where you are. And see you next week. Cheers. Now I'll go to the super outro, if everything works.